A spilled sketchbook. A stranger's hand, steady and warm. Sadie Monroe didn't mean to drop her art supplies in the middle of Fifth Avenue. She was just trying to make it to a blind date her roommate insisted on, late, flustered, and already doubting herself. She never expected the man who helped her to be anyone more than kind. But that same man, elegant, distant, never meant to be her match, was waiting at her table 10 minutes later. What began as a mix-up would become a connection deeper than either of them imagined. Because sometimes the wrong table is exactly where you're meant to sit. Before we dive into the story, comment below where you're watching from. Enjoy the story, everyone. He never liked New York in December, not the icy sidewalks, not the glittering shop windows pretending warmth, and definitely not blind dates arranged by smug friends who thought they were doing him a favor. Graham Weston zipped up his wool coat tighter as wind sliced through the avenue, ignoring the chatter of his best friend, Leo, walking beside him. "Come on, Graham, try not to look like you're heading to a funeral," Leo said, grinning. "It's dinner. 2 women. 1 table. Low risk, potentially high reward." "I'm only doing this because you wouldn't shut up," Graham muttered. They were half a block from the restaurant when it happened. A crash of papers. The sound of something snapping. Then a soft, frustrated, "No, no, no, please not now." Graham's head turned on instinct. The young woman had fallen to her knees on the wet sidewalk, books and sketch pads splayed around her like a spilled secret. A broken strap dangled from her torn canvas bag. Pastel pencils rolled toward the curb. Without thinking, he crossed the sidewalk, crouching beside her just as she tried to gather the mess. "You don't have to," she started, glancing up, and stopped. Their eyes locked. Graham wasn't sure what hit him first, the snowflakes catching in her lashes or the way her expression flashed between embarrassment and something fierce, like she was used to doing everything alone. "I've got it," he said simply, handing her a sketchbook. A child's face smiled from the page, drawn in rich pencil strokes, alive with warmth. Her gloved fingers brushed his. "Thanks," she said. "I wasn't watching where my bag broke, and He nodded. "It happens." He helped her gather the rest, a small stuffed narwhal keychain, a set of color markers, a folder labeled Monroe S. She tucked everything back into the bag, adjusting the remaining strap to make it hold. "I'll manage," she said quickly, as if bracing for judgment. "I've got dinner plans and I'm already never mind. Thanks for the rescue." "Glad I was here," he said, then added almost reluctantly, "Have a good night." "You too," she said, stepping back toward the corner. Graham rejoined Leo, who had paused nearby, raising an eyebrow. "You? Helping a stranger on the sidewalk? Who are you and what have you done with my emotionally unavailable friend?" She dropped everything. I reacted. "Don't make it a thing." Leo chuckled. "Fine. Let's eat. Our table's waiting." Inside Les Vin, the air smelled of rosemary and wine, the lighting golden and soft. They were early, so the hostess led them to the reserved booth near the back. Graham slid into the side facing the door just to keep himself anchored. He was mid-sip of water when a familiar voice reached his ears. "Reservation for Monroe," the woman said to the hostess. Graham turned. It was her. The woman from the sidewalk. The sketchbook, the storm of papers, the narwhal keychain. She didn't see him at first. She looked flustered, fixing her hair quickly, smoothing down her coat. She followed the hostess through the restaurant and headed straight for their table. Leo stood to greet her. "You must be Sadie," he said. She blinked. "Leo?" No, Leo said, smiling. "I'm Graham's friend." "Your date is," he gestured toward Graham. Sadie's eyes landed on him and widened. For a moment, the room narrowed. "You," she said softly. Graham, equally stunned, managed a nod. "Looks like we're not total strangers after all." She hesitated, then slowly, carefully, slid into the booth across from him. Leo grinned, oblivious. "I'll go wait for Jenna at the bar." "You too, take your time." When he was gone, silence hung between them for a beat. "I didn't expect this," Sadie finally said. "Neither did I," Graham admitted. "I'm not usually the stop on the street and help type." Well, I'm not usually the drop everything and crash type, she said, her voice wry. They both almost smiled. A waiter approached, pouring water. Sadie glanced around. This place is, wow. You've never been here? She shook her head. I'm a children's book illustrator. I usually eat where napkins are optional. Graham studied her. Not in the way he usually assessed women, polished, calculating, but truly looked. She wore a dark green sweater under a thrifted coat. Her earrings didn't match. She had a faint pencil smudge on her wrist. And somehow she was the most unpretentiously captivating person he'd seen in years. You're really an illustrator? He asked. Trying to be, she said. I do freelance work. School visits. Sketch covers. It doesn't exactly pay like finance, but it feeds me creatively. I remember the sketch you dropped. A kid's face. Max, she said, smiling softly. My best friend's son. He's on the autism spectrum and I draw him in all my books with his permission, of course. He loves being in stories. Graham's throat felt tight. He hadn't expected to care this quickly. He didn't want to. So this wasn't your idea, he said. The blind date. Nope. My roommate bribed me with wine and passive-aggressive compliments until I caved. Leo told me I needed to rejoin the human race. I'm still not sure if this counts. Sadie chuckled, and just like that, the tension broke. Their conversation flowed, slow and natural. No performance. No careful positioning. Just moments. So what do you do? She asked. Graham hesitated. Investment portfolios. Private markets. Boring to most. Try me. I left a hedge fund a few years ago. Built my own firm. Sold it. Now I mostly float between things. That actually sounds like freedom. Sometimes, he said, and meant it. When the waiter returned for their order, Sadie chose the mushroom risotto with a self-conscious shrug. If I'm going to be here, I'm going to eat like I belong here. You already do, Graham said quietly. Their eyes met. And for a moment, nothing moved. Sadie stirred the risotto gently with her fork, her gaze drifting toward the amber light above their table. Graham watched her, the way her lips pressed together in thought, the way her fingers curled around the stem of her water glass. He wasn't supposed to be here. Not in this moment. Not with someone who made silence feel full instead of awkward. He cleared his throat. You're not what I expected. She looked back at him. Is that good or bad? I don't know yet, he said honestly. You. Sadie tilted her head. I expected someone a little more finance bro. Less quietly intense. He almost laughed. I've been told I'm emotionally undercooked. Maybe just slow-roasted, she offered, her eyes twinkling. Before he could respond, Jenna appeared beside the table, looking flawless in her winter white coat and impeccable waves. Behind her, Leo hovered, visibly sheepish. There you are, she said, eyes darting between Sadie and Graham. Sadie, you're with it. Graham, Leo interrupted quickly, stepping in. Yeah, there was a tiny mix-up. Sadie's brows lifted. Tiny? Jenna crossed her arms. So, you've been sitting with the wrong date this entire time? No, I've been sitting with the right person, Sadie said before she could stop herself. The table fell into a tense hush. Graham sat up straighter. I didn't know who she was. We ran into each other outside before we came in. It just happened. Leo gave Graham a half-smile. Man of the hour. You're breaking protocol. Jenna exhaled hard. I guess I'll sit with Leo then. Might as well salvage the evening. Sadie bit the inside of her cheek. We can switch. It's fine. Graham surprised himself. It's not. Leo raised both hands. How about this, we don't switch. Just enjoy the evening. No pressure, no expectations. Just food and company. Reluctantly, Jenna slid in beside Leo, eyeing the wine list like it had personally offended her. Sadie turned back to Graham. I really didn't mean to hijack your date, she murmured. Neither did I. But I'm not sorry. Their dinners arrived and conversation at the table resumed, clumsy at first, then gradually smoothing into something that resembled civility. Jenna spoke in curated anecdotes and carefully posed smiles, while Leo countered with charisma and occasional foot-in-mouth jokes. But for Graham and Sadie, the energy was different. Quieter. More grounded. They asked about childhood's favorite books, the last thing that made them cry. And they answered without performance. "I'm sorry if I embarrassed you," Sadie said softly as dessert plates were cleared. "You didn't," Graham replied. "I can't remember the last time I enjoyed dinner this much. Maybe you're just underseasoned, remember?" He smiled, a real one, something unguarded slipping through. "You make it easy to forget the scripts." They stood together in the lobby while Leo waited outside for a car. Jenna had already vanished into a rideshare without so much as a goodbye. Snow drifted gently past the glass entrance. "You need a ride?" Graham asked. "I'm close. I'll walk. Clears my head." "Do you walk every time someone turns your evening upside down?" She shrugged. "Only when it feels worth thinking about." He stepped closer, hands deep in his pockets. "If I wanted to see you again, outside of random sidewalk rescues and misassigned dates, would that be completely off limits?" Her breath curled in the cold air between them. "Depends. On? On whether it's you asking or the version of you from earlier tonight. The one who helps, listens, and doesn't need to impress anyone." He held her gaze. "It's me." Sadie hesitated for half a heartbeat, then reached into her coat pocket, scribbled a number on a folded receipt, and handed it to him. "Then call me. But not tonight. Let it sit. Let it be something real." And she walked out into the night, boots crunching over snow, her figure fading slowly into the Silver City light. Graham stood there long after she was gone, holding the piece of paper like something fragile and rare, unsure whether he'd been undone or finally seen. 3 days passed, and the paper stayed in his coat pocket. Graham had looked at it more times than he cared to admit, still folded, the edges softening from how often his fingers found it there. Each time he considered texting her, something stopped him. Not fear. Not exactly. More like an ache he didn't know how to soothe. He was used to complications, not connections. And certainly not the kind that made the world feel quieter when someone was around. He had just returned from a board meeting that felt like noise and static when his phone buzzed. A message from Leo. "Sadie's doing a school art show tonight. Washington Heights Elementary. You didn't hear from me. No invitation. No pressure. Just information." But Graham didn't need much. By 6:30, he was standing in a school hallway that smelled like glue sticks and optimism. The walls were lined with crookedly hung paintings, dragons with glitter tongues, wild forests, animals reading books. Parents milled about, pointing proudly at drawings, while teachers moved between them like warm satellites. And there she was. Sadie stood near the back of the makeshift gallery, talking to a small boy in red sneakers. She was laughing, really laughing, and the sound of it cut through the noise in a way Graham hadn't expected. Her hair was tied up loosely, one pencil still stuck behind her ear, her green coat folded over a chair. She hadn't seen him yet, but she would. He took one hesitant step closer, scanning the drawings around her. Then he saw it. A single framed page. Watercolor and ink. A city sidewalk. Snow falling. A woman on the ground. A man crouching beside her, his hand reaching towards scattered drawings. It was them. Not precisely, but unmistakably. The emotion, the lines, the feeling of stillness in the storm. The caption read, "Sometimes everything starts when something breaks." Sadie turned then, sensing him, and their eyes met. There was no gasp, no dramatic pause, just the smallest, softest smile. "You came," she said. He nodded. "That's you." She glanced at the drawing. "It's what happened. I process things with color." "It's beautiful," he said. "Raw. Real." She tucked her hands into the sleeves of her cardigan. "I didn't know if you'd ever use the number." "I didn't," he said. "I held it. I thought about it. Over and over." Sadie studied him. "And now I want to ask you something. And I don't want to fold it away again." He stepped closer. "Can we start over?" he said. "Not pretend the mix-up didn't happen. Not erase it. But begin from here, this moment where we both know exactly who we are. Sadie didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached behind her, grabbed a program sheet, and wrote something down. "I'll do you one better," she said. "Meet me here Saturday morning. I'm reading to the kids. If you still want to start something after that, ask me again." He looked down at the page. A time, a room number, a challenge. "Deal," he said. She smiled and turned back to the boy beside her, who tugged at her hand. Graham stood there for a moment longer, watching her animate stories with her voice and her hands, giving everything without asking anything in return. He left feeling lighter than he had in years. And 2 days later, he was back. The classroom smelled faintly of crayons and old library books. Tiny chairs circled a colorful rug, and paper snowflakes hung from the ceiling like frozen wishes. Graham felt absurd in his tailored coat, clutching a cup of coffee that looked oversized in his hands. A few parents sat along the walls, but most eyes were fixed on the woman at the front of the room. Sadie knelt beside a bin of picture books, pulling one out with practiced care. She wore jeans and a loose cardigan over a t-shirt that read, "Tiny Humans, Big Ideas." Her hair was tied back in a messy braid, and her voice was calm and warm as she called the children to the rug. They flocked to her like planets to a sun. Graham watched her from the doorway. She hadn't seen him yet, but he saw her, saw the way she crouched to meet each child's eye, the way she gave every question a real answer, no matter how silly. She was magic, not the performative kind, but the kind that slipped under your skin without asking. Then her gaze lifted, found him, and softened. She finished the reading, Winnie the Pooh, of course, then handed the class over to an assistant. She crossed the room with easy confidence and stopped just in front of him. "You came," she said again. "Not a question. I keep showing up. It's becoming a habit. Good ones are rare." He handed her the coffee. 2 creams, no sugar. "If I remembered right." "You did." They stepped into the hallway as the noise of children faded behind them. She sipped from the cup, watching him carefully. "So?" she asked. "Still want to start something?" "Yes," he said without hesitation. "But not the usual way." Sadie raised an eyebrow. "What's the usual?" "Dinner. Wine. Pleasant conversation over food no one really remembers." "Not terrible." "No," he agreed. "But it's not us." Her lips quirked. "Then what's us?" "A bookstore," he said. "A small one, with creaky floors and second-hand poetry books. You pick one. Pick one. Then we sit in a corner and argue over who made the better choice." She grinned. "Competitive literature appreciation? Something like that. I'm in." They made it as far as the sidewalk before she stopped him. Snow had started again, light, almost playful. Sadie turned to him, cheeks pink, eyes brighter than he remembered. "I don't want this to be perfect," she said. Graham blinked. "Okay. I mean, I don't want the pressure of perfection, the perfect story, the perfect quote, the meant-to-be stuff. I just want to be." He stepped closer, his voice low and sure. "Then let's just be. Messy, unscripted, real." Sadie nodded, then rose to her toes, pressing a soft kiss to his cheek. "Real works." They walked down the block in silence, their shoulders brushing now and then, their laughter spilling into the cold like steam from coffee cups. A week later, Graham found himself back in her classroom, not as a visitor, but as a volunteer. He read The Velveteen Rabbit with a quiet reverence that surprised even him. Sadie watched from the corner, one hand at her lips as if she might break from smiling. And one day, without pomp or poetry, he whispered to her, "I like who I am when you're around." She didn't say anything. She just laced her fingers through his and didn't let go. It was a Tuesday when he saw it. Graham had taken the long way to his office, a habit he'd picked up without realizing it. The air was sharp, still holding the weight of winter, and the streets were quieter than usual. He passed storefronts glazed with morning light, coffee shops blinking open, a florist hanging bunches of eucalyptus above her door. Then he saw the window. A small independent bookstore. One he'd never noticed, though he must have passed it before. Its display was simple, hand-lettered cards naming staff picks, a second-hand copy of The Little Prince, and a new hardcover propped on a wooden easel. His heart stopped. The cover showed a girl with a tangle of brown hair sitting cross-legged on a snowy sidewalk. Around her, spilled books, crayons, a plush keychain shaped like a narwhal. A man's hand extended into the frame, offering a pencil. The title, in careful script, "Everything Starts Somewhere." Written and illustrated by Sadie Monroe. He didn't remember entering the store. One moment he was outside, the next he was standing in front of a small table, the book in his hands. The paper felt thick, textured. Her name on the title page, printed in bold. On the opposite page, a quote. "Some things break to let other things begin." "Are you here for the signing?" the clerk asked, gesturing toward the back. Graham followed the voice before his mind caught up. She sat behind a table, signing books for two giggling girls and their mom. Her braid was loose, a paint smudge on her wrist, same as always. And when she looked up, she saw him instantly. There was no performance, no breathless reunion, just something unspoken softening between them. The girls left and he stepped forward. She stood. "Hi," he said. "Hi," she echoed. He held up the book. "You published it." "I did. It's beautiful. I had good inspiration." There was a pause. "I walked by," he said. "I wasn't looking, but I saw it and I knew." She stepped around the table, the distance between them shrinking. "I didn't know if you'd see it," she said. "I hoped, but I didn't know." "I've been carrying your receipt in my coat for months," he replied. "I think I was just waiting for the right sentence." She smiled barely. "Did you find it?" Graham opened the book, turned to the back page. There, tucked in the corner, was an illustration. A man and a woman sitting on opposite sides of a tiny bookstore table, books piled high between them. She was laughing. He was watching her. He looked up. "I think I'm in this story." "You always were." Outside, snow had begun to fall again, slow and quiet, like the city was holding its breath. Sadie reached for his hand and he let her. No resistance, no hesitation. They stood together, fingers twined, surrounded by books and second chances. And when the clerk passed by and asked if they wanted the last copy signed, Sadie took the pen, opened the book, and scribbled 4 small words. "Thanks for showing up."